Welcome to Reading Bear. Today we've got a wild story where OP works hard to buy themselves a dream car, only for their entitled parents to hand it over to their spoiled sister because she deserves a Porsche. I never owned anything flashy before I bought the car. It wasn't brand new or some rare collector model. It was a used Porsche with a few dings, a worn steering wheel, and a back seat that never saw a passenger because no adult fits there. I bought it the normal way. Long months of saving, picking up extra shifts, setting alerts for listings, getting a pre-purchase inspection, negotiating until the seller's eyes glazed, and then babying it like it was my first real reward for becoming the kind of adult I promised myself I'd be. My family's reaction was what you'd expect if you knew them. My parents congratulated me in that half-hearted way that isn't actually congratulations. My sister posted a video of herself in the passenger seat, pushing buttons and squealing, calling it our family's first luxury car, like she was a silent cosigner. My parents never forgot to remind me she was always meant for nice things. They've said that about everything since we were kids. If I got something new, it was because I worked. If she got something new, it was because she deserved it. I learned how to keep the peace by setting boundaries and using distance. I limited drop-ins. I kept spare keys to myself. I kept insurance as driver only because I didn't want surprise calls about, can she borrow it for a day? I'd already done the lend a thing once and never see it again. Dance with tools, a laptop, a camera, and even a winter coat that apparently looked better on her anyway. I wasn't going to add a car to that list. All that prep doesn't matter when someone decides they're entitled to your stuff. It happened while I was at work. I looked down at my phone on my lunch break and saw a string of notifications. A photo of my sister leaning on my car with the caption, "Finally driving what I deserve." A text from my mom saying, "Don't be mad." Another from my dad that read, "Be a team player." Then I saw the one that made me put my fork down. "We gave your car to your sister for the weekend. She deserves a Porsche. You can use rideshare." I thought it was a joke. I walked out to the parking lot to prove it was a joke. There was an empty space where my car should have been. No broken glass. No oil spot. Just a sun-bleached rectangle of paint where my car usually sat. I felt that white-hot, buzzing anger that makes your fingertips tingle. The urge to call and start yelling was immediate. The smarter part of my brain kicked in and told me to breathe and think. Yelling never works on people who live in their own world. It feeds their story that you're the problem. What does work on people like that is letting them choke on their own rules. I pulled up our family group chat and scrolled. My parents had texted that morning, "We're coming by." I hadn't seen it because I was in a meeting. My sister's posts were at the same time as my lunch break. There were hard-eye comments from her friends. I kept scrolling and saw the message from my mom again. "We gave your car to your sister for the weekend. She deserves a Porsche." I typed. "I didn't give permission." My dad replied, "We did. We're your parents. Stop being petty." There it was. They'd said the quiet part out loud. They authorized something they had no right to authorize, because that's how they think the world works. I took a screenshot. Then I did something that, to people like them, looks like weaponizing rules. To the rest of us, it was just following the rules very, very literally. I texted, "If you're saying this is a gift from me to her, put that in writing. If you're saying you authorized her to use my car without my permission, put that in writing. I need to know which it is so I know how to handle the paperwork." My sister chimed in, "It's a gift." Duh. "Be a good brother," my mom added. "Yes, a gift. Don't make this ugly. Handle the paperwork." My dad wrote, "We authorized it. Stop acting like a stranger." I stared at those messages like they were lottery tickets. I took screenshots of everything and saved them in a folder, including the timestamps and my parents' lock screen photos that showed in the chat header. You never know when someone is going to try, later, to claim a phone was stolen or a message was faked. I emailed the screenshots to myself. Then I put my phone down and went back to work like nothing happened. Malicious compliance, at least how I've seen it work in the real world, isn't flashy. It's not locking someone in a conference room or writing a 50-page memo in Comic Sans. It's simple. You do exactly what the person demanded, literally and publicly, and then you let the system they swear they respect smack them in the face. They said it was a gift. They said they authorized her. They told me to handle the paperwork, so I handled the paperwork. On my break, I logged into my state's motor vehicle website and filed a notice of transfer and release of liability. You can do this when you sell or gift a car. You list who you transferred it to, the date, and where to send future mail. You're telling the state, if this car racks up tickets or gets in a camera violation, or ends up in an accident, don't come to me. Send the nastygrams to that person. It doesn't transfer the title that requires signatures, but it shifts the liability for day-to-day stuff. There's a reason honest people do it the day they sell a car. In the box for buyer transferee, I put my sister's name and my parents' address. In the notes section, I typed the bare minimum. Family gift per family messages on date. I printed the confirmation screen to PDF. I saved it to the same folder as the screenshots. Next, I opened my insurance app. I removed the car effective immediately and saved the change confirmation. Then I called the toll pass service and deactivated the transponder associated with the plates. I didn't want to pay for her joyrides through toll lanes. I asked if they could mark the plates not on account. They did. Finally, I opened the DMV chat and asked if there was anything else I needed to do to ensure I wasn't liable for someone else driving my car. The agent used the kind of careful language government employees use and said that if I hadn't authorized the driver, I should file a police report for unauthorized use. They gave me a case type and a number for the non-emergency line. I thought about it. Filing a report would take it from bureaucracy to law enforcement, and I wasn't sure I wanted to escalate that far yet. My goal wasn't to get my sister arrested. It was to make the people who always talk about being a family that follows rules see what those rules look like when they apply to them. I decided to wait and let the paper trail do its job. If it turned ugly, I'd call. That afternoon, my phone blew up again. Photos of my sister at a cafe, my car in the background, a boomerang of her revving the engine in a parking garage, a caption that said, "Manifest the life you deserve." I went back to work and let the clock run. The first sign that the paperwork was working came that evening. A call from my sister, which I ignored. A call from my mom, which I ignored. A voicemail from my dad, which I listened to because I'm not a complete masochist. He said the police had pulled my sister over for a routine thing plate scanner, maybe, and told her the insurance on the car didn't exist. She had to call someone to bring proof, or the car would be towed. My dad sounded irritated at the system, which is funny because half of my childhood I was told, the system has rules for a reason. I didn't return the call. I texted, "Insurance is canceled because it's not my car anymore. You told me it was a gift. Per your instruction, I handled the paperwork." No reply. An hour later, my mom sent a long message about humiliation and embarrassment and how a real man wouldn't leave his sister on the side of the road. That's the line they use when they want me to do something they know they can't demand. I didn't respond. Eventually, my dad wrote, "We paid the tow. We'll remember this." I saved those, too. The next morning, I took rideshare to work like they told me I should do. In the car, I reviewed my plan. I wasn't going to scream or make threats. I was going to keep doing exactly what they'd told me to do, treat it like a gift, keep it in the family, and handle the paperwork to the letter. Meanwhile, I'd make sure I wasn't on the hook for anything. By noon, I got a city email forwarded from the DMV. It said a parking citation had been issued to the vehicle the previous night while it sat in a tow lot waiting for release. I knew why. Tow yards store cars in spaces that count as on-street for ticket quotas, and cities don't coordinate internally as well as you think. The important part of the email was the responsible party field. It didn't list me. At lunch, I finally called my mom back. I kept it short. I said I had a release of liability on file. I said any tickets, tolls, or accidents would be directed to my sister at their address. I said that's what gift means when you ask the government to treat it as a gift, and I had the text where they said it. I said if they wanted to undo the gift, we could do that at the DMV with both signatures and with reimbursement for the tow and any fees they'd caused. My mom did the thing where she pretends she doesn't understand, so she doesn't have to answer. She said, "So you're punishing your sister?" I said, "I'm doing exactly what you asked." She hung up. The next 2 days were quiet. I used rideshare and saved the receipts. I figured if this ended up in small claims court, I could show I followed their direction there too. Use rideshare. Sometimes malicious compliance comes with a paper trail thick enough to make a clerk nod along. Silence ended with another voicemail, this time from the tow yard. The car had been released the day before after someone showed proof of insurance. Not mine, obviously. My guess, a bare-bones policy my parents took out in my sister's name for 30 days because insurance binders can be bought with a card and canceled later. But when they tried to leave the gate, the release couldn't be completed because the registration had been suspended after my insurance change synced with the DMV. The yard explained they needed proof of current registration and the signature of the registered owner or a notarized letter. They had tried to call me at the time, but I hadn't picked up. They were calling now because storage fees were accruing, and I was still the titled owner. Translation: if I didn't play ball, the balance would keep climbing, and tow lots have a legal clock where they can claim a lien and auction a car. I had a decision to make. I could let it sit there and teach everyone a brutal lesson, maybe lose the car in the process. Or I could go get my car back, pay out of pocket, and then go after my family for the bill. I left work early and took a rideshare to the yard. It was in the part of town where tow lots hide behind chain-link fences and signs about no cash kept on premises. I brought my title, my ID, and a folder with printouts of the texts and the release of liability confirmation. I kept my voice level with the clerk. I didn't want to be one more person screaming at someone stuck between rules and angry people. The bill made me wince, but it wasn't catastrophic. Tow fee, initial processing, a few days of storage, a city ticket stuck on the windshield for good measure. The clerk said I was lucky the registration suspension popped when it did. Another couple of days and they would have filed for a lien. I nodded and paid. Then I signed the release form and walked to my car. It looked like someone who didn't own it had driven it. Coffee cups, a fast food bag, glitter from a makeup highlighter on the center console, a seat set so far forward I had to laugh. There was a new scrape on a rim. I took photos. I took more photos than anyone would ever need. Then I put my key in the ignition and listened to the sound I'd missed since my lunch break 2 days earlier. On the way home, I stopped at a hardware store and bought a steering wheel lock. Then I went to a locksmith to reprogram the fobs and disable the old spare that had somehow made its way into my parents' hands. I called the building manager and asked them to add a note not to release keys to anyone who wasn't me. They nodded and said something about, "We had a situation." And I realized my parents had probably charmed or bullied a front desk person into giving them the spare key I'd once left when my car was in a deep parking spot with a dead battery. That was my mistake. I trusted a system that was built for convenience, not for family politics. After I put the car in a pay-by-the-month garage, nowhere near my apartment, and locked it like I was hiding crown jewels, I went home and opened my laptop. I typed an invoice: towing, storage, ticket, locksmith, rideshare to and from work, and a small amount for the rim repair I'd scheduled. I attached the photos, the receipts, and the texts, and sent it to my parents' email with a subject line that said, "Costs for handling the paperwork as instructed." I kept it polite. "As you can see," I wrote, "your decision to give my car to my sister created costs. Because you declared it a gift and told me to handle the paperwork, I did so and have taken steps to ensure I'm not liable for further use. If you'd like me to consider reversing the paperwork and allowing her to use the car again at any point, we can discuss a written agreement with all fees in advance, a deposit, proof of insurance, a signed waiver, and a daily rental rate. Otherwise, please settle the attached invoice within 30 days. If not, I'll file in small claims." They didn't answer that day. They didn't answer the next day. Then my dad sent a text saying, "We're family. We don't do invoices." My sister posted a story in a rideshare saying something snarky about some people are jealous. My mom sent a long message about how this would be so simple if I just added my sister to my insurance and taught her how to handle a nice car. That one made me laugh, because I had just taught her how to handle a nice car. You pay for it, you insure it, you register it, and you live with the consequences of your choices. I didn't reply. I waited the full 30 days. Then I filed in small claims. A lot of people assume small claims is dramatic. It's not. It's fluorescent lighting, plastic chairs, a clerk who has seen everything twice, and a judge who cares about receipts and whether you can explain your story without turning it into a therapy session. I brought the folder with my screenshots, my invoice, and my receipts. My parents showed up with my sister and a printout of photos of her with the car like they were going to convince the court that vibes equal ownership. The judge was brisk. They asked me to explain what happened in plain language. I said I bought a car with my own money, paid for it, insured it, and used it responsibly. My parents took it without my permission while I was at work, gave it to my sister, and told me in writing to treat it as a gift and handle the paperwork. I did exactly that. As a result, the car was towed, tickets were issued, and I incurred costs to protect my property and my liability. I was asking for reimbursement of those costs. I showed the screenshots. I showed the invoice. I showed the receipts. My parents tried to turn it into a morality play about family obligations. My mom said I was cruel. My dad said he'd authorized the use because it's our family. The judge stopped them and asked, "Are you on the title?" They said no. The judge asked, "Did he give you permission?" They said, "We are his parents. The judge looked at the screenshot of the text where my dad wrote, "We authorized it," and then looked at my mom's "It's a gift" message. Then the judge asked my sister, "Did you have insurance at the time you were pulled over?" She stared at the table and mumbled about a binder. The judge awarded me the full amount on the invoice and filing fees. It wasn't a life-changing sum, but it was enough to sting. The judge also included a note in the ruling stating that returning property to the titled owner was appropriate and that any future dispute should involve law enforcement because the court wouldn't entertain family governance. Explanations about property ownership. I took that to mean, next time, call the cops. I left the courthouse with a copy of the judgment and a feeling I hadn't had in a long time after dealing with my family. I felt calm, not vindicated, not triumphant, just calm. I'd done what they told me to do. Exactly. And when the consequences they thought were always someone else's problem landed on their doorstep, a neutral person with a robe and a nameplate had said, "Yes, this is how it works." My parents tried to ice me out after that. My mom didn't invite me to a family dinner. My dad sent an email about restructuring expectations. My sister posted a vague story about haters. I kept my head down. I parked the car in the garage and used my beater for groceries. I set up a second bank account and siphoned savings into it because a certain kind of family member will always ask to borrow money from the account they know you have. I changed the lock on my mailbox after finding it ajar one afternoon. I also made sure the building staff had a note in my file that said, "Do not release any property or keys without written authorization by me, and copy building management." A week later, my sister texted me something short. "You ruined my life." I stared at it for a while and then typed, "I followed your instructions." I didn't send it. There's no point. She doesn't want an explanation. She wants a world where declaring something hers makes it hers. The thing about people who expect free upgrades in life is that reality eventually sends them a bill. My sister had to pay a fine for the insurance ticket. The temporary insurance binder she'd bought became real when the company realized she had a citation and a new car on her file. Her monthly premium ballooned to a number that made me glad I'd removed the car from my plan. She got a letter from the DMV with my release of liability attached, which meant any city tickets would come to her name and address. She posted less about manifesting and more about how predatory fees keep good people down. I kept my mouth shut because the fastest way to look like a villain is to argue with someone who is loudly doing victim cosplay. If this story ended there, it would be neat but not complete. What made it satisfying wasn't just the court win. It was the part where I had to choose what kind of relationship I wanted with my family after drawing a bright line. I decided on something boring and new, boundaries with teeth. I wrote a short message to the family chat, kept it so simple a traffic cone could understand it. I said I was done lending anything of value. I said I would not respond to group messages about my property. I said any request for access to my car, apartment, or accounts would be denied without discussion. I told them to contact me by email if they had legitimate emergencies only. Then I muted the chat. It didn't go over well, of course. My mom sent a shaky, guilt-dripping response about the family you're born into. My dad wrote, "We deserve respect." My sister posted a meme about choosing your tribe. I didn't reply. You don't debate boundaries with people who think your existence is a group project. You enforce them. And when they try to break them, you do exactly what they hate. You follow the rules they claim to respect. A few days after the judgment, I received a money order in the mail for the full amount plus fees. No note, no apology. Just the kind of quiet compliance people like that offer when they don't want to admit the rules apply to them. It felt like the opposite of every past fight I'd had with them, where I'd begged for basic fairness and been told I was dramatic. This time, I didn't talk. I filed. I wish I could say the story ended with a hug and a vow to do better. It didn't. My family is who they are. I'm who I am. The difference now is that I have a folder full of receipts and a habit of handling the paperwork. If anyone tries anything like this again, I won't hesitate to call the non-emergency number and cite the case type the DMV agent gave me. I won't hesitate to bring out the screenshots. I won't hesitate to add another steering wheel lock or to move my assets and spare keys to places nobody can bully a receptionist into accessing. Sometimes I look at the car and feel a little dumb that I ever thought I could keep something shiny in my life without it turning into a family referendum. Then I turn the key, and the engine gives me the same honest sound it gave me the day I bought it, and I remember why I wanted it in the first place. It wasn't about the badge. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about having one nice thing I earned that nobody could take credit for or decide belonged to someone more deserving. My parents still think my sister deserves nice things. That's fine. They can buy them for her. They can co-sign her loans. They can add her to their insurance. They can take out a credit card in their own names to pay for her upgrades. They just can't take my name and my property and use them like a family piggy bank. There's a rhythm to entitlement. People make a demand, you push back, they escalate, you collapse, they win, and then they make a bigger demand next time. I broke the rhythm by doing nothing extraordinary. I acted like a normal adult in a normal world. I documented. I filed. I paid what I had to pay to protect my property. I asked a neutral party to enforce a rule that was already written down, and then I left the rest unsaid. If you're reading this and thinking about a fight you've been having with someone who thinks, family means yours is mine, this is what worked for me. Not a screaming match, not a gotcha trap, just a stack of boring steps. People like my parents hate boring steps because boring steps don't bend for feelings. They bend for forms and timestamps and signatures. A while after the court thing, I ran into my sister at a grocery store. She looked tired. She had a cart of plant-based snacks and a case of sparkling water. She saw me and did that quick look around to see if anyone she knew was watching. Then she said, "You know you went too far." I stared at the basket. I thought about telling her how many times I'd given in because it was easier. I thought about the laptop, the coat, the camera, the tools. I thought about the way she posted my new car, while my rideshare driver looked at me in the rearview mirror like he knew exactly what kind of family this was. What I said was simple. I did exactly what you asked. She made a noise that was somewhere between a laugh and a scoff and rolled away. I didn't follow. At home, I took the car out for a short drive on back roads. The sun was low, the asphalt was clean, and the turn-in felt like a promise kept. I parked it in the garage and put the steering wheel lock on, then checked the tracking tag buried deep in the trunk well, because I am done learning the same lesson twice. Weeks have passed. I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop because I know how this goes. There will be another test at some point. Something smaller, maybe an innocent ask that sounds harmless. Or a family emergency that turns out to be a sale at a furniture store where my parents want me to help. I'm not bracing for it, I'm just ready. If it comes, I already know my script. I'll ask them to put it in writing. I'll ask them to confirm what they're asking and who's paying. If they demand something absurd and tell me to handle it, I'll handle it, and I'll handle it in a way that follows the rules exactly. Because the rules were written for a reason, and I'm tired of pretending they don't apply to the people I'm related to. That's the thing I learned from this. You don't have to be clever to draw a line. You just have to be boring in a world that rewards drama. When someone declares ownership over your life because they changed your diapers once, you can try to out-argue them and lose your voice, or you can find the right form and fill it out neatly. People think malicious compliance means playing a trick. Sometimes it means lighting up a path with the rules themselves and inviting them to walk down it with you. If they don't like where it ends, that's on them. They were the ones insisting it was a gift. They were the ones telling me to handle the paperwork. All I did was say yes. And the best part, I didn't have to raise my voice once. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.